Hey guys, Farmer Jesse here. A lot of people have been asking how we turn over our no-till beds. And I did a whole flipping lot of no-till bed flipping today. So let's talk about it. All right, so how you do a bed flip will depend almost entirely on the crop that you have coming out of the ground. So you'll remember this bed from our last video, the no-till carrot video. Carrots come out and they fully come out of the ground. There's no residue. It's just the carrot comes out and then that's it. But essentially all I did to get these beds ready for the beets that are going into them tomorrow is, pulled the rest of the carrots. We harvested some for the CSA, the rest of these will be going out. But we harvested those, then pulled any weeds that were left, and then, put a little bit of compost down, and tomorrow all I'll do is go through and put a little hole, like so, put a beet in, cover it up. And then that's the most straightforward of the bed flips. The other bed flips I did today that are relevant are actually a little bit more complicated, because if you have a crop that has residue staying in it, let's say I did 2 different beds that had lettuce residue. So that's like you actually have to cut the lettuce out. So what I do is I take a stirrup hoe and I sharpen that dude. And I basically go straight through the lettuce stem, and I leave the stem, as little of it as possible, maybe right below the surface or right above it. I'm just using that stirrup hoe to really quickly cut that lettuce out, leaving the root mass, the root ball. Now, what crop is going to go after that? Like, what crop can follow such a thing when you leave all these stems in? Anything. Now, it's not pretty, right? We've gotten accustomed to really pretty seed beds, to nice, flat, clean seed beds. And sometimes in this situation, at least turning a bed over really fast, I've not found a good way to do that. So essentially all I'm doing is cutting out the lettuce, adding a little bit of compost, and in this case, I actually sowed spinach. But the thing is, these aren't really getting in the way. The root balls, these little root masses, I could cut these a little shorter, but they're not really getting in the way. I'm just going around them. So a lot of I know where the rows are. Obviously the rows were straight, and I just went in between the rows, and I still got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rows of spinach, even though I still had all that lettuce residue. So we'll see how it germinates, and we'll see, here, this is gonna be fun, because in about 10 days or so, I'll do a August farm tour edition, like little, catch up on all that stuff. And that'll help give us some indication to how they're doing. There you can kind of see, same thing, I cut out the lettuce, and then instead of seeding, I just transplanted some kale. And then I actually did the same right down there in Everbed. So essentially, this is something that I think is really important. There's actually several reasons I don't just yank the lettuce plant out. And they're actually really important. So the first one is that whenever you pull a plant out, the same goes for weeds. Whenever you pull something out, those roots are pretty far down there, especially in the no-till system. The roots of everything seem to grow a little bit further out. So you actually end up pulling a lot of dirt up, and with that you pull up a lot of weed seed. So you want to leave the weed seed down there. The next thing is that you want to leave that root ball in there to break down. That's important primarily because it adds a little bit of carbon. So the soil sort of stores that root mass and uses it as carbon. It turns into a carbon source. The other thing is it's still using those exudates from the photosynthesis, the residual sort of sugars that it creates for the fungi and the bacteria, it's still got those and it's still using them. So the soil is still using them. And by leaving those root balls in there, you're leaving any sort of attached mycorrhizal fungi that are there. You're leaving any sort of bacteria that have kind of gathered around it. So the next thing that goes in, those can just kind of hop right on over and latch onto that other root system. That's super important. So that's why we leave that root mass in there. It isn't pretty. Haven't found a better way to flip a bed, although there is one other way. It's slower, but when it comes to flipping a bed faster, that's the fastest way I've found. So the other way would be like this. So this was corn. What I did was I mowed the corn, and then I put a bunch of compost over top of it, and then I just put a tarp over top of it. In this case, it's landscape fabric. That will just essentially break that down, and then here in a couple weeks, I'll be able to plant it to something else. And you know, that's an option, but it's not a fast option. It's a very slow option. Essentially, it's just, you're pulling out a crop, you're either pulling it all the way or you're cutting it out at the base. And it has to be cut out at the base so it won't grow back. Like lettuce will grow back if you don't cut it low enough, so you got to cut it pretty low. There are different crops do different things. You know, some crops don't need to be cut that low, but you want to cut them low just so they're not standing straight up in the air, sort of like some of that lettuce is. That's, you know, you cut it out, then you add just a little bit of compost to keep it covered. That's the whole idea. You don't have to wear, you know, kind of 90s Jinko looking jeans with some holes in them. Yeah, I mean, that's not a requirement. He's doing the too legit thing now, isn't he? So yeah, you're putting down the compost and then you're either seeding or you're transplanting. And that's kind of it. I mean, I know there's some nuance there, and you know, sometimes you'll even want to interseed or interplant stuff, and I've done that a lot in Everbed, where I've actually, you know, almost always having another crop going in or already in when the first crop comes out. So in the case of we'll just look at this real quick as a little recap. This started out as, can you see that? All right. So started out as celery, went to lettuce, and I planted the lettuce while the celery was still in there. While the lettuce was still in there, we planted the green onions. Probably tomorrow, I'll plant kale in between these green onions. The green onions will come out, and I already planted the other side to kale. But then once the green onions come out, then it'll just be the kale sitting there, and it'll be ready to roll. So anyway, I wanted to catch you guys up on what we had going on there, get a lot of questions about that one, and it is kind of weird. So that's where we are right now. I hope that video helps. If you like this video, please like this video. Also make sure to subscribe, share it with your friends, and leave a comment, leave a question, anything you guys are curious about how we're doing this sort of no-till stuff, holla. All right, we'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Bye. I found Wendell.